Dolphins fans, how are we doing today? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network, day 13 of training camp for our Miami Dolphins. Light work on the field today, more of a walkthrough feel in today's practice. So very limited on-field practice notes. We do have a highlight. We do have some notes, so stay tuned for that. But a very major development as it pertains to Jaelan Phillips, as well as some other player news and notes that we are going to get to. Some good, some bad. We're going to get to all of that here in a second. Before we do, though, I got to hear from you. Spoiler alert, there it is. Let's hear your thoughts on our boy number 15, Jaelan Phillips, being activated by the Miami Dolphins from that PUP list. Go ahead, drop your thoughts on that news, on any other news on the day's report. Go ahead, drop that in the comments. If you haven't gotten subscribed yet, make sure you are doing that as well. But yes, Miami Dolphins fans, the quest for that early season return for Jaelan Phillips took a very positive step forward on Monday when head coach Mike McDaniel announced that, yes, Jaelan Phillips would be activated from the PUP list and join the team already for practice. Obviously, Jaelan Phillips suffered that torn Achilles back on Black Friday against the Jets. I don't even need to say this, but a very tough injury to come back from. But, you know, Jaelan Phillips just being young helps, but being the absolute menace that guy has been throughout this recovery, ends up getting medically cleared by the Miami Dolphins to return from practice. Now, one thing that I want to note about the Miami Dolphins making this move right now when they did is, based on my understanding, taking Phillips off the PUP means they can't put him back on the PUP if he were to suffer a setback. So if that were to happen, they would either need to keep him activated on the team's 53-man roster, or they would need to put him on season-ending IR. So knowing this information, the front office, the coaching staff, the medical personnel, they must have felt pretty damn comfortable with where he is currently in his recovery. I will also point out that this news doesn't absolutely set in stone guarantee that he is 100% back for week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But however, it's at least a very great sign that it is very, very, very possible and will at least be an option for new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Quite honestly, I'm interested just to see how these reports come from practice over the next couple of weeks. I'm kind of guessing that preseason is in doubt. I don't think he's going to get much reps. Like I said, we'll see. I'm more so curious to see how these reports come out of practice. Unfortunately, this news comes with the news of some unfortunate news. Like I said, Grayson Murphy and Cam Brown both seeing their seasons come to an end. Now, obviously, both of these guys were reserve players. They were players battling for roster spots in general. But Grayson Murphy, we've talked a lot about him having a great offseason from OTAs, mini camp, so far in training camp, looking like a potential practice squad player if, in fact, he weren't to make the team's 53-man roster. And then you've got Brown, who was brought in to not only compete for a spot, but also to be giving a boost to that special teams unit. So obviously not the greatest news. Let's just say the edge rushing position is it's not as crowded as it was last week at this point in time, but I would say that it's still looking pretty damn solid. Obviously, Jaelan Phillips coming back. You got Chop Robinson. You got Mo Kamara, Quentin Bell, Emmanuel Ogbah. Bradley Chubb does remain on the PUP, but one quick nugget I want to add about Bradley Chubb. Don't be surprised, I was told, if he were to begin the season on the IR. Not the IR that's taken him out the entire season, but IR obviously being designated able to return. I say that knowing that the Dolphins weren't quite done yet when it comes to the roster on Monday, as they also announced a couple of signings, a couple of linebackers. Wyatt Ray was one of them, and I'm apologizing in advance if I mess up David's last name. David Anini. Anini? Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I've heard the name before. It's been such a long time that I should have looked it up, and I just completely blanked before doing today's video. But he actually went undrafted back in 2022. He's been with 4 NFL teams since then, however, has not appeared in an NFL game. Ray, on the other hand, has been with 8 teams since being an undrafted free agent back in 2019. He's appeared in 23 NFL games, was most recently actually in the UFL, where he recorded 5.5 sacks. I wish I could have more. I wish I could be more positive about these signings. However, they're camp bodies at this point in time. So unless something pretty wild happens in the meantime, I'm just going to leave it there for today. But with that, let's jump into some quick notes and news from today. Like I said, we got a couple of highlights. We do have a few notes. Tua's first throw of team drills was a 15-yard completion to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek also caught a pass in the flat from Tua in that session. He was marked down on the 5 by that, but a couple of beat writers, media in attendance say, now, Tyreek Hill is scoring in this situation, in an actual game situation. Couple of running backs of note. Jalen Wright, noted for a 10-yard touchdown run around the edge. I don't know about you, but I really liked what I saw for the most part on Friday. Yeah, there were a couple of negatives as well, but for a rookie debut, I'm absolutely taking it. The biggest thing, in my opinion, about Jalen Wright is the idea of this offense not really needing to change its philosophy, its identity, if something were to happen to a guy like Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So I really like what we're seeing out of Jalen Wright so far. Chris Brooks, he had a touchdown run behind a solid block from Jack Driscoll. We'll have more on him in a second. Nice to see positive reports, though, from a guy like Jack Driscoll. After some early struggles in training camp, another guy that I thought exceeded at least my expectations on Friday. The wide receivers, Erik Ezukanma returned to practice today. We talked about how he's going to need to have to turn it up to make this team's 53-man roster. Obviously, we've got a couple of injuries at the position, but Odell Beckham, who we're going to talk about here in a second, will eventually return to practice. Jaylen Waddle came back on a limited basis today. You got River Craycraft stepping up and being a consistent option. You got Malik Washington turning it on this last week at practice. Eazy-E is going to have to turn it up if he wants to crack this team's 53-man roster. Mentioned Odell Beckham Jr. Mike McDaniel mentioned that he will not come off the PUP list this week. By the sounds of it, he kind of falls into that week-by-week category at this point in time. But just remember, with some of these veterans, week 1 is the goal, especially as it comes to these veterans and training camp just in general. Talked about Waddle return today in at least a limited basis. Like I said, get healthy, be ready for week 1 against the Jaguars. I already mentioned Tyreek with Tua, but he also added a couple of additional touchdowns later in practice, one notably in the back of an end zone on a touch pass from Tua. The video highlight comes in as we talk about the tight ends today. Jonnu Smith catches a 10-yard touchdown from Tua in the back of the end zone. I will get that popped up on the screen for you right now. Quick video here. Nice little celebration. Pull one up into the crowd. Like I said, very limited highlights today. Not a lot going on the field in regards to actual practice today. But hey, at least you get a highlight today of quarterback 1 throwing a touchdown to one of his new toys in Jonnu Smith. Mike McDaniel did mention that Tanner Conner will be missing some practice time this week after the injury he suffered in the preseason opener. However, he did not offer up a timeline for that injury. Offensive line, Teron Armstead actually got a couple of reps at practice today, but I say that knowing that, yeah, it was at walkthrough speed. So take that for it with a grain of salt as well. I also did want to give a quick update regarding center Aaron Brewer. His injury is actually a little bit more than I originally had it being the day that it happened. He's going to miss some time, but the hope is that he is available for week 1. Unfortunately, I can't go into any more details, but an update nonetheless. So today, with Brewer out at center, Liam Eichenberg slid over to center, which meant Lester Cotton then took some of those reps over at right guard. I am kind of curious to see how the starting offensive line shakes out for Saturday's preseason game. We're still likely not going to get the most accurate forecast on this offensive line. With Teron Armstead, my bet would be on him not playing. Isaiah Wynn remains on the PUP. We mentioned Brewer being out. So we're not going to get the most accurate offensive line, but I do like to see where these guys slot in. And then based on where they slot in, how are they performing? Because as you know, with the offensive line over the last couple of years, it's probably likely a couple of these guys are going to make their way into the starting lineup with all the injuries that we've always had seemingly at that position. We'll wrap things up. Just a few more notes here on defense. Calais Campbell noted for a stop at the line of scrimmage in the run game. Jordan Brooks and Chop Robinson returned today. Both have missed some time recently. Neither played on Friday against the Falcons. Jordan Brooks was noted for a tackle for loss as well. Quentin Bell and David Long teamed up for a run stop at the line of scrimmage. And then wrapping things up on the secondary, Saran Neal, well, he was back at practice. He left Friday's game at one point as well. And then Jordan Poyer, who's missed some time, obviously, at practice, didn't play on Friday. He was back today working at least in some capacity. He was sporting a pretty sizable club on that hand with that thumb protection as well. So at least some decent news today in regards to the secondary. Like I said, light on-field work today, so that is all I have. But like I said, every time there's light on-field work, it seems like there's plenty of team news to go along with it. So that's kind of what you get today, Miami Dolphins fans. I believe the team is on the field for practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. They got an off day on Friday before the preseason game on Saturday. So like I said, get subscribed, stay tuned. We will have training camp reports as many as we possibly can. But until next time, Miami Dolphins fans, fins up.